Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
If you have a business, or maybe you are a CEO of one, and your business is just not moving along like it should, I always say not firing on all cylinders, use the car analogy. We've got somebody that can help you with that, uncover the culture, figure things out, help you progress, and of course, increase your revenue. Lois Sonstegard is with us. She is a owner and business coach at Build Tomorrow, and she's back with us. Lois, how are you?
I am good. Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation and for the opportunity to be here with you, Steve.
So important to have you back. And we nailed it last time. I truly believe so many businesses are, I don't even want to say this, but in trouble. They're in trouble. They're struggling right now with many different things. And we did identify a lot of that came from COVID. Why don't we recap about what we talked about last time, that what's really not working in the workplace?
Yeah. Right now we have so much disconnection going on at the top, at the bottom, at the board of directors level as well. And so everybody's feeling this stress and this overwhelm. Before COVID, imagine this. There was a report from Gallup that showed that 85% of employees were overwhelmed and stressed. That was before COVID. So think of what it is now. And so we talked last week a little bit about how there's people aren't engaged at work, only 34%. So think of it. You're on a team with 10 people, 7 are not engaged. They don't care whether you get the work done or not. That leaves 3 people to do the work. That puts stress on those 3 people, right?
And not to mention that so many people now have multiple roles because of cost-cutting measures and such.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
And then we talked about how only 24% of people trust their leaders anymore. Well, so again, you have a team of 10, 2.5 really don't believe anything you say. And, we're hearing that in the media, we're hearing it everywhere. So that sense of not trusting and not being engaged. And then we have had the big resignation followed by the silent quitters. We've learned that 82% of Gen Zers are silent quitters. They're our next leaders. That's worrisome. And now we're also hearing talk from companies that with the economy the way it is, with people not wanting to do what's asked of them, not wanting to come back into the workplace at times when they're asked to do so, we're going to be seeing the great layoffs, and those are coming in the next year or so. So we have a lot of tension that's growing. The same thing is happening within our businesses today. We have businesses that are just struggling to try and make sense out of what they're going to do with their businesses. So, for example, we have 32.5 million businesses in our country are small businesses. They provide 1.5 million jobs a year. 64% of the new jobs created each year are created by small businesses. 90% of the business population represents small and medium-sized business. So what happens to our small business is incredibly important. It's our future. And it's, I think, one of the things that's not getting enough attention or discussion. And yet, during COVID, when I was starting to call CEOs and CFOs and say, what's going to happen following COVID? Their response was, don't worry about COVID so much. It's the economic downturn we'll experience afterwards. And it's that mid-range, 2 million to 500 million, that we're uncertain about their future. Think about that, Steve. That's the backbone of our economy. What do we do if that group isn't around?
I can't even imagine. And the small business is the backbone of our economy. That being said, going back to the quiet quitters, because I hear that term all the time. How do we motivate people? How do we get them juiced up, jacked up about going to work, feeling good? It goes back. I think I never forgot this, but the culture of Google,
Yeah.
where they were the the game changer. You come to work and there's a cafe, beautiful cafe. There's pinball machines, there's video games, there's childcare, there's all of this just to help you mentally enjoy your job, feel better about life. I think it works, as far as I can tell, for Google. But how do we motivate employees now?
Right. It's a challenge. I received a phone call not too long ago from a large provider in healthcare, and they're struggling with finding employees. And here's part of the challenge. We know right now 20% of doctors, according to some of the medical literature, are planning to quit in the next 2 years. 40% of nurses say the same thing. That's a huge impact on healthcare.
But why? Why? You would think a doctor, great career, making lots of money. That's why you studied. Why would you want to quit?
Very good question. They're passionate about their work. They went into medicine or nursing or healthcare because they really wanted to make a difference in people's lives, right? And they got there, they were able to do it. And then policies came down. You can't do this, you can't do that. So let me give you a really good example. And this is from several years ago. And it shows sort of the problem that we have in terms of how we view situations. So one of the things that we know is that if we want companies to innovate, they've got to try different things. You're going to have things that aren't going to work the first time around. So you have this collection of your learnings, failures, perhaps. I call them learnings. So a number of years ago, I received a telephone call from a very good friend who was the head of a major hospital in Chicago for women's and children's services. It was at 5 o'clock in the morning, and there is never good news that comes when it's 5 o'clock in the morning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, Lois, what do I do? She said, I got into the office early this morning and they're lined up down the hall, around the corner, all with their resignations. I said, so what happened? Well, there had been a baby that had died in the NICU, in the neonatal intensive care, during the night. And she said, Lois, the problem is it was our error. And so the staff felt horrible and they were ready to resign. Already heads had begun to roll, resignations had happened, the physicians that were involved had been removed. She was in charge of nursing and she had to make some decisions. So all morning she met with her staff to try and sort through what happened. At about 4:30, the press was at the hospital, television cameras, everybody, you know how that goes, right?
Wow.
Everybody wanted to know what happened. And she was called down to address the press. And the CEO of the hospital said, please let people know who you're firing and how you're changing things. And she looked at the press and she looked at her boss and she said, I haven't fired anybody and I'm not planning to yet. She said, you are assuming that if I fire people, I won't make these same mistakes again. But she said, I am clear. These people will never make this mistake again. And if I bring in new people, they don't have this learning. And so we're vulnerable again. Now, I tell that story to healthcare groups and they go, oh, finally somebody realizes we're not robots. We do the best we can under the conditions that we work with. And sometimes we're imperfect. When I tell that story to groups of business leaders, they go, oh, you have to be kidding. She didn't fire people. And that's the difference and the struggle that we're dealing with. So we have people who are in the business who are there because in healthcare, for example, they really want to make a difference. I think the same thing is true in our companies, in our corporations. People are there because they really want to make a difference. They want to be acknowledged for making that difference. They want to see that they have a meaningful contribution. Does my passion, my desire to help people, does it matter? Actually, right now in healthcare, you can get dinged for that because it takes time to spend time caring. And there's only so much time allotted to you. So those are the tensions we're beginning to feel. And certainly in COVID, people put in extra hours. They worked under unbelievable conditions. And then following COVID, you had all the mandates. Well, if you don't get vaccinated, you can't work. Many of them already had gotten COVID of various types. And so there was that, why are you putting this on us when we've been at war for you? And when are you going to appreciate us? It's almost like what happened, remember? Maybe you're too young to remember this, but after Vietnam and the soldiers came back, they would at the airport be given civilian clothes because people were not in favor of the Vietnam War. And they would have eggs thrown at them. All sorts of things would happen if they were in uniform. And so they changed them right at the airport. And there was a bitterness that happened amongst the soldiers because, look, we put our life on the line for you and you don't appreciate what we did. And I think we're seeing that same tension in healthcare. We're seeing it in our businesses. Look, I've missed my kids' games at school, their performances, in order to go out of town to help the business. And you don't appreciate me. Worse yet, I may be in your next group of layoffs. So part of that is I'm hearing a new concept being talked about in business right now, and that is what we need more than anything else is loyalty in our workers. And the problem is loyalty is a two-way street, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You have to have loyalty from the people that you're giving it to. And then if they're going to be loyal to me, I have to return that. But here is, I think, something that's so important to understand. Loyalty follows allowing people to be free to make choices. And when they're free to make choices, they may work with you and they may go the opposite direction, right? The ones that choose to go with you are incredibly loyal. So back to the healthcare example with my dear friend with the baby that died. Those people who remained at the hospital absolutely turned that place upside down, changed systems and processes. So they became the poster child for the Joint Commissions of Health. They were a place to visit to see how things should be done.
Well, they banded together to create a better experience and a better workplace. And kudos to your friend. You know, if this was truly an accident, which it sounds like it was, she stood behind them. And without going into detail, I'm aware of a situation where it wasn't medically connected, where employees did something seeking a positive outcome. It didn't go that way, unfortunately, and the employees were suspended from their job. And in that example, right away, you take a look at management, that management didn't stand behind them because they were doing what they truly believed was right.
Yeah.
And they got penalized for it. And there you go with the loyalty.
They got burned, didn't they?
Yeah.
So the other thing that I think is so important is with freedom, when people have that sense of freedom, I can choose. I want to come back to this because I'm afraid I may forget it. Because I want to make another point first. With freedom comes hope. And right now, so when you're free to make choices, you're hopeful, you're positive, you're excited, right? You see a future, you see what can be done. So right now we operate kind of in a world in which we have the myth where we say that the world of opportunity is shrinking. The truth is the world of opportunity is expanding if we can see the future and we can find hope in it. So one of the places where I learned that so much, Steve, was many years ago. Well, as a child growing up, a story I learned from my mother, because I think I mentioned last time she had been in a concentration camp. And at nighttime, they knew who would be dead in the morning. And I would say to her, how could you know who's not going to be alive in the morning? And she said, it's by how they say goodnight. They go to all the people who are important, but it's hollow and it's empty. They've given up. And so what's happened in our workplace is we've taken hope away. And then we say, please be loyal, please be engaged, please be this, please be that. And without hope, hope is what drives from within us. Human beings cannot survive without hope. So another example, I think I mentioned this briefly last week when I was working with cancer patients once long ago. And in the one unit that was with terminally ill patients, mortality rate was around 85%. So there was a sense of, there's no hope. We're just here to get them through these last few days. But what if it could be different? What if there could be a future, right? And so we began to change how we looked at that. We shifted. We planned for things not working out. We planned for the fact that we might have to have letters written for our children's weddings and their graduations and whatnot, because it was inevitable in many ways that death was knocking at the door. But what if? And so as we started to ask that question, having planned and looking to the future, the amazing thing is people started to live. Our death rate fell. Why? Because all those hormones within us, the dopamine, the different things that are in us, were released. The immune system was able to work with the cancer-fighting drugs, and now they were able to survive, and they had a future. Wow. That's hope. That's what our companies are looking for. Where is their hope? You want me to give my soul to you? I'd love to, but I need to see there's a future. And that's the piece that's missing. Same thing is true in our businesses. Our businesses are desperately looking for hope right now. We're seeing so many of them closing, or so many of them not being able to get funded. There's huge pressures in terms of the economy. Supply chain will not resolve quickly, especially if it is true that diesel fuel will become more difficult to get a hold of. But number one problem from companies all over that I speak with is employees, supply chain, and then access to capital. So one of the things that really does help deal with some of these issues is collaboration. It helps us across the workplace because it allows people to have that connectedness. If we also do that in our workplaces, it changes what happens exponentially. So let me just give you an example from work that came out of Deloitte. They studied businesses in Australia. And what they found was that, and this is just companies internally, when they collaborated internally, on average, employees worked 15% faster. Unbelievable. 73% of them had improved quality. So think about that. They were 2 times more likely to outgrow their competition, 4 times more likely to see growth to the bottom line, 5 times more likely to experience increase in employment, and morale increased 30 to 50%. Now think of that as businesses. If you start to bring a group of businesses together to collaborate, if you can outgrow your competition 2 times by just doing it yourself, what can you do if you bring 4, 5, 10 companies together to collaborate who are committed to each other's growth? And that's the key, though. You've got to be committed to each other's growth. It's that element of loyalty again, right? Mm-hmm. And it is something that people want. I think they're hungry for it. They need help learning how to do it because we don't have a culture that teaches it. We have a culture that teaches you how to compete. I'll help you until I can gobble you up, spit you out, and put you out, right? And so there's that fear of what can I do? How can I survive?
Do you think, and then we talked about COVID, Lois. By the way, we're talking with Lois Sonstegard. She's the owner and business coach at Build Tomorrow and has worked with so many businesses, major CEOs for decades. Dare I say at least 30?
Oh, yes, you may.
Just helping.
Age does speak.
And that's a good thing because the experience is there helping businesses turn it around. Because of COVID, a lot of people are still working from home.
Yes.
Is that still a good thing? In terms of customer service, I find as the customer, it's not the greatest experience anymore. You call up, you need tech support, you need, customer support, whatever it might be. It takes longer. You always have that, the pre-recorded message that says, due to COVID, wait times are longer. Is it still a good thing?
It is a tension we're going to see continuing for a while. There's research that says, yes, it's a good thing and employees do well. It depends on the company, I think. However, I agree with you that it does have also an impact. It has an impact on collaboration and connectedness. We're not as connected. But Steve, part of why people want to be at home is they're tired of the politics at work.
Okay.
They're tired of the PC culture. And it's sort of like, all you who want to be PC, you can be together. We want to just have a life. Thank you. I'll stay home where it's safe. So home, the hybrid model has become the safety net, the psychological safety net for people. And we don't have a way anymore of being able to speak what is truthful or our opinion. We're afraid. We're walking on eggshells all the time. And so we want opinions, we want input into things, and people gauge carefully what it is that they need to say and how they need to say it. So I think hybrid is going to be an issue we're going to struggle with for a while. And it has its positives. For women, it has been a godsend because they can take care of their children and not feel that pressure. On the other hand, I'm also hearing a lot of people saying, oh, I love this. I could now do 2-3 jobs. And so their income has increased. And so you have a lot of different things going on. And when I think it goes back to when you're not respected at work, you're not valued at work, there isn't a sense of loyalty to you, all of these other issues emerge. They're simply the consequences of what we've been doing. That's all they are.
Interesting.
And so we can choose to do it differently, right?
And you know what? I've seen recent research that says that people, or surveys, that people feel that they are working way harder than they ever did as they work from home, which speaks volumes because you're working harder over here because you're getting away from this culture over here that you don't want to be around. The PC, the loyalty, all of that. I want to do my own thing. I'll work harder so I don't have to deal with management and all of that. It goes right back to what you said before about the culture in our workplace.
So, and part of what that happens, I think there's issues we really need to think through. So part of what we've created with our PC culture is we've tried to create sort of an equity kind of situation, right? And the problem is that when you're sitting at home, you don't have those things being discussed or dealt with. So I was talking with a CFO of a major company. You would know them. But, and I said to them, what's going to happen now with the hybrid work? What's going to happen to minorities or women, for example, in terms of their promotability within companies? Is it going to be harder or is it going to be more difficult? And his comment was, I think there'll be more opportunities potentially because the politics are taken out. Now it's the quality of your work. It's not your water cooler conversations. That may be true. It may not be true, but I think it is something to think about.
Absolutely. We're just about out of time. I want you to tell everybody, if you're listening, you have a business, you have a company, you're a CEO, and you want to work with somebody that can help you change it around. That's Lois. How do they reach out to you?
They can email me at Lois@buildtomorrow with the number 2, They can also, that's by far the best. You can also try calling, leave a message, 952-200-6539. I really think collaboration, Steve, is the future. And if you're going to grow your business, scale it, you're going to have to find a way of increasing resources. This is the way to do it. We'd love to help you. And Steve, those are some of the things we're going to talk about, I think, in some of our next sessions. How do we do this?
I would love to hear that. And we all hear the same thing. We know what the challenges are, the problems are. Let's work on fixing them and making the workplace a better place for people to be and happy. Give them some
better, happy, and meaningful.
Absolutely.
And profitable.
Yes. Well, you know what? That comes when you get the other part done, right?
Exactly.
All right, Lois. Thank you so much. And we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.